Cinema has always thrived on excess, but in the world of exploitation films, that excess became an art form. Low budgets, controversial themes, and raw, unfiltered creativity defined these films, and their soundtracks were just as bold. From the wah-wah funk of blaxploitation to the eerie synths of giallo, from the psychedelic fuzz of spaghetti westerns to the disturbing orchestral scores of cannibal films, music played a crucial role in elevating these underground classics. Blaxploitation, funk, soul, and social commentary. The blaxploitation era of the 1970s brought stories of crime, revenge, and empowerment to the forefront, accompanied by some of the most iconic funk and soul soundtracks ever recorded. Isaac Hayes' theme from Shaft, 1971, set the tone with its smooth yet gritty orchestration. Curtis Mayfield's Superfly, 1972, was another game changer, blending streetwise storytelling with lush arrangements. Other classics include James Brown's score for Black Caesar, 1973, and Willie Hutch's Foxy Brown, 1974. The music wasn't just background noise, it was part of the film's attitude and cultural impact. Giallo, sinister synths, and haunting melodies, Italian giallo films known for their lurid murder mysteries and hyper-stylized violence featured equally unsettling music. Goblin, an Italian progressive rock band, became the definitive sound of the genre with their scores for Deep Red, 1975, and Suspiria, 1977. Ennio Morricone also lent his genius to giallo, creating eerie avant-garde compositions for films like The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, 1970. These soundtracks were hypnotic, blending jazz, electronic experimentation, and classical influences to create an atmosphere of pure dread. Spaghetti westerns, twangy guitars, and operatic grandeur. The Italian westerns of the 1960s and 70s redefined the genre with their stylized violence and morally ambiguous heroes. Ennio Morricone became synonymous with spaghetti westerns, composing legendary scores for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966. Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968. And A Fistful of Dollars, 1964. His music combined operatic vocals, electric guitars, whistling, and unconventional percussion to create soundscapes as vast as the desert landscapes on screen. Cannibal films, beauty and horror in contrast. The cannibal subgenre, infamous for its extreme violence and controversial themes, often featured surprisingly beautiful music. Riz Ortolani's Cannibal Holocaust 1980 theme is a hauntingly serene piece, making the film's brutal imagery even more disturbing. Other films like Eaten Alive 1980 and Jungle Holocaust 1977 used a mix of tribal drumming and eerie synthesizers to amplify their sense of primal terror. Women in prison films, disco, funk, and raw energy. The women in prison exploitation films combine sleaze, rebellion, and revenge with high-energy soundtracks. Many of these films, like The Big Dollhouse 1971 and Caged Heat 1974, featured groovy funk and disco-infused scores that contrasted sharply with their brutal narratives. The fusion of infectious beats with gritty storytelling made these films a unique sonic experience. Nunsploitation and Nazi-ploitation, religious choirs, and dark ambience. Non-exploitation films played with themes of repression, eroticism, and religious guilt, often set to gothic organ pieces and eerie choral arrangements. Meanwhile, Nazi-ploitation films like Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, 1975, used martial drums and ominous orchestration to emphasize their disturbing themes. These films pushed boundaries both visually and musically, embracing controversy to the fullest. Carploitation and Ozploitation. Rock and roll and high-speed mayhem. Car-centric exploitation films, or carploitation, thrived on high-speed chases and adrenaline-fueled rock music. Films like Vanishing Point, 1971, and Death Race 2000, 1975, incorporated classic rock and bluesy guitar riffs that matched their breakneck pacing. Meanwhile, Ozploitation, the Australian exploitation boom, brought high-energy soundtracks to films like Mad Max, 1979, blending punk rock with orchestral tension. Rape revenge films, minimalism, and unsettling atmospheres. The rape revenge genre, infamous for its shocking content, often used music to enhance the sense of discomfort. I Spit on Your Grave, 1978, had a sparse, almost non-existent score, making its brutal realism even more unsettling. The Last House on the Left, 1972, however, featured a folksy, almost upbeat soundtrack by David Hess, creating a jarring contrast with the film's violent narrative. Chambara films, traditional Japanese instruments and avant-garde sounds. Japanese Chambara films, samurai action films, had their own unique musical identity, blending traditional Japanese instrumentation with experimental sounds. Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, 1954, and Yojimbo, 1961, featured epic orchestral scores, while later exploitation films like Lady Snowblood, 1973, incorporated psychedelic rock elements, influencing Quentin Tarantino's use of music in Kill Bill, 2003, other subgenres and their sounds. Canucksploitation, Canadian exploitation films, synth-heavy scores like those in My Bloody Valentine, 1981, mockbusters, cheap imitations of Hollywood films often reuse stock music or low-budget electronic scores, nudist films, lighthearted jazz and bossa nova-style soundtracks, vetploitation, Vietnam War exploitation, heavy rock and protest songs mixed with orchestral tension. Exploitation films were wild, daring, and often controversial, but their soundtracks were just as groundbreaking. They defined the mood of an era, giving voice to rebellion, horror, and sleaze in ways that mainstream cinema never dared. Whether it's the funk of blaxploitation, the haunting synths of giallo, or the operatic grandeur of spaghetti westerns, these films and their music remain cult classics. Which exploitation film soundtrack is your favorite? Drop a comment below.